is a proverb that says, without a vision, the people perish. I've thought about that a lot in terms of St. Augustine's, not so much that we're going to perish, but that we're at a crossroads. And now is the time to begin to think about a vision so that we have that in place when a rector comes. So I'm here with Chris, and I want to do a little bit of an introduction. He and Amy have been married for 36 years, have 2 grown children who live in Renton, and he has, over the last 30 years, served 4 churches, from 50 people to 900 people, served on a denominational board and chaired an executive committee on denomination, and recently retired, volunteering at St. Augustine's by writing for The Light and occasionally preaching, for which I am grateful. He enjoys writing and reading and cooking and wine and outdoor activities. So Chris, let's talk about vision.
Yeah.
As a pastor, how has vision been important to the churches that you've served?
I think with good leadership, it's vitally important. And by good leadership, I mean bringing people along and not being the lone voice, being the primary voice of vision, but not being the only generating voice of vision. I think that the pastor needs to be the megaphone of the congregational vision. And so I think it is very important. And I've seen how important it is. I've seen how good vision, a compelling vision that has caught a congregation, or the congregation has caught it, can mobilize a group of people. Like, for instance, I don't know if you remember this, but in the early to mid-90s, there was a Saturday that was Christmas Eve, and then Sunday was Christmas Day. So we had been doing a sermon series on the life and ministry of Jesus, and we decided that our Christmas presents would be to cancel our Christmas Eve services, 4 of them, and instead go out into the community identifying where we think the loneliest people might be. So we went to nightclubs and bars and taverns. There were some live activities that we went to, and we brought gifts and engaged people in conversation. And if they were agreeable and the person was brave enough, they'd pray with them about whatever was on their heart. So that was an entire congregation, a large one, that shut down for the biggest services of the year, and it mobilized people to demonstrate God's love in a very practical way, which is important for me.
What has it been about the vision you saw at St. Augustine's that's appealed to you?
Well, I had been pastoring 30 years in an evangelical setting. It's kind of a progressive evangelical setting. So in that setting, in particular, the worship was sermon-centric. And the thing that attracted me to St. A's was the centricity of the Eucharist. So I love the time-tested words of the liturgy. They're very meaningful, they're very deep, and there's not a lot of fluff around that. And I like the fact that the sermon isn't the central piece, the Eucharist is. I find that very theologically reaffirming. And I love sacramental worship. And I like the contemplative piece that we have in there, especially when we weave in Celtic spirituality. So that was a huge draw for me. I felt like coming into St. A's, I was drinking from a very deep well. So I thought that was great. And then after the service, of course, we have our coffee hour. And, whoops.
Rolling.
And then there was the coffee hour, which I loved. And I've told the congregation at St. Augustine, you had me at deviled eggs. The food, the fellowship, the warm welcome that we received, the greeters were great. And again, the high involvement of people in St. Augustine's, in the local community. I just think it's vitally important for a congregation to learn that it doesn't exist for itself, that it exists for the world that God loves. And I think missional outreach is a form of spirituality. It's one of the best ways we grow in the likeness of Christ who came to serve. So I appreciate that emphasis a great deal. It says a lot about a church.
We are in the midst of a transition. That's no surprise to anybody. And so I'm curious about how vision has helped your churches that you pastored who've been in transition.
Well, I pastored a lot of churches in transition. Two come to mind, and these are maybe extreme examples, but I started a church from scratch. So I planted a church in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and vision was all we had. We had a name, we were incorporated, and we had a vision. And so we started by gathering in kind of invitational gatherings and kind of sharing in creative ways what we were thinking God was calling us to be. And it was from that a nucleus formed that became the core of the church. So vision, in that sense, drew people who were attracted or had a like mind. And that became the genesis of the church. Roll the tape forward 20 years, I'm pastoring a multi-staff. That's Bella. She's our guard dog. We don't need a wireless alarm system. She is it. Should I just keep going?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't mind her.
All right. So roll the tape forward 25 years. I'm pastoring a multi-staff church, and we decided, and it was a year-long process, to plant a church from that church. It's called parenting a church, and so we were the primary sponsor. We hired somebody. They were on staff for 2 years. They generated a nucleus, and then they went out and started a church. In both cases, we could not have done either of those two things without a vision, and I felt like a broken record, again and again and again, reminding the congregation of what we're all about. And so it was extremely helpful. It attracted like-minded people, and it kept us kind of moving forward.
So, do you think a vision ever needs to be refreshed or re-envisioned?
I do. I think that we often get core values and vision kind of mixed up. Core values don't change a lot. The church will always have a function of witness and worship and education and so on and so forth. All the core values that don't really change a whole lot, but their adaptation or application needs to change to remain fresh, or else it just goes stale. Ministries can grow stale. And the impetus for, I think, that kind of transition is a refreshed vision. And it may not be a significant refresh, but it might be. It might have to be. It just depends kind of on the situation and on the congregation and on the leadership, really, because it needs to begin with the leadership, and then it needs to move into the congregation so that they can help shape it and carry it forward, I would say.
You know, this has really been good to be able to kind of share some of these ideas, knowing that St. Augustine's is sort of on the cusp of a new a way of being, and with a new pastor at some point. And I do thank you very, very much.
I appreciate being a part of the opportunity. It's a good time.
Good.
Thank you.